You might miss an incisor or two, but they're built to stay maintained, even if the lion gets kicked or struggles with an animal. Those teeth are so firmly anchored into their skulls. And I always think that young lions, maybe not quite as scrappers, he's starting to fill out nicely, but I always think that teenage lions look a little bit like adolescent boys in terms of their slightly patchy facial hair development that is only just starting to come through in the little mohawks that they get. And it's hard to imagine exactly how young these males really are. They really are. We always, when we sit and watch and look at the tracks, we look at the 4 toes that show through along with the back pad. And Kathy, who's watching us from Tennessee, you wanted to know about the 5th claw, or the dew claw, that these lions have. And it doesn't show through in the tracks, and we can just see the one of his right paw. It's quite tricky to spot, but it's up there just in the middle of your screens, or just above the middle of your screens. And those dew claws are also, having spoken about how firmly anchored those canines are, those dew claws are equally well anchored. And it is essentially like a 5th finger, or a 5th toe, rather. Toe, I think, is probably the better word. And it sits right on that top ankle part of the bone. And when lions go and hunt, they use them as a way of actually holding and getting into them. And it's the biggest claw by far. And if you have a look at the way that it's structured, it's tucked away in a bony sort of sheath, or a cartilage sheath, that protects it and stops it from getting dirty or anything along those lines. Why did you wait till then to yawn? You just have to wait for him to yawn again. Those dew claws are an incredible structure, and you can just start to see on the top of his foot, in the way that he's lying, there's a dew claw there. Very firmly anchored and used to bring down prey. It is one of the most highly evolved foot structures that we get out here. You would have heard me calling these gentlemen the Birmingham boys, although I don't know whether gentleman is a bit of a stretch or not. But the reason that they are called the Birmingham boys is because they come from a pride known as the Birmingham Pride. And Tina, you wanted to know a little bit about prides and coalitions, and how they get their name and who names them. Now, in this particular place, and in this particular circumstance, the Birmingham Pride, which was apparently an enormous pride of lions, close to 40 members at one point. Now, the Birmingham Pride generally hangs out, or has a territory around Birmingham Farm. So it's a piece of land that is connected to the Manuletti and to Kruger and to where we are now, but it's called Birmingham. And that's generally where the prides get their names, and they will adopt it of the sort of the area that they are. It's not always the case though, and it will usually be named by common agreement between the guides, or as a term of respect for somebody, they might get a chance to name them. But for the most part, they're names that have stuck around for quite a long time. Bear in mind that female prides, the Nkuhumas or the Sticks or the Talamatis, any of those lion prides around here, they could have been here for generations, because females stick together, they stay together throughout their lives, and so the pride continues on. It never changes or becomes different. The only thing it might do is split away. And then typically when the when the boys or the male lions leave their pride and start to form a coalition, they tend to keep the name of the pride that they came from. That's the general rule. There are exceptions, and what we'll also find now that for example, the Birmingham boys have been referred to as the Gowrie males by some guides. Different guides in different areas call things different things, essentially. These lines are very, very flat. They're not up to very much, and I think in a moment I'm going to leave. But before I do that, I want to answer one last question from Miss Jin. You might have pet cats at home yourself, and you were wondering whether big cats would react in the same way to catnip. And the answer apparently is yes. I've never seen it myself, but apparently they do. Maybe not in completely as dramatic a way as a house cat might, but it does very much attract their attention. And it was something we were thinking of doing when we were racking our brains years ago trying to figure out how to count the leopards in an area where they were very, very skittish. And we actually thought about trying, instead of baiting them, which would have messed with the situation, we thought about putting catnip on poles with camera traps. We never did it in the end, but apparently it does have a similar effect on them. Right, these lions are not up to much, but I promise you I will be back. I want to go and investigate what was happening around the dam and whether or not it was the 5th Birmingham boy. And whilst I do that, I believe that Brent is back up and running on his bushwalk. Let's head across to him for now, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later. And never fear, I will return to these lions.
So, after our very interesting and I think Jandra and I are both very, very clever fixing of our signal pole, it broke. So what we've done is we've put a stick inside it, and then we have duct taped it closed. So hopefully it'll hold for a while. So we've moved out. We're not going to go through too many thickets with our precarious aerial. So we just stopped next to this nice little mud wallow, and you can actually see there's a couple of how they've been formed slowly. And I'm going to start with this one here, and there is a frog I heard calling in here, and I've been sitting here quite quietly trying to spot the frog. The frog is smaller than my fingernail. It's called a dwarf puddle frog, and it is proving more elusive than even the jumping timbuti seeds I was in search of earlier. Not making any noise now, but you can see this wallow is probably formed by elephants in the beginning, starting to kick up a bit of dirt and stuff like that, and then a little bit of groundwater would have then, and you probably found warthogs would have wallowed it in a bit, maybe a buffalo or two, and as it's got bigger and bigger, now it's sort of buffalo sized, and I can see the eddies have been back here, and they would have kicked it out, dug it out, and sprayed some nice cool muddy water on themselves. It's not very deep. We'll see. There you go. That's how deep it is. But nice to see water on the ground. I mean, it's been, even though it is so green, we are definitely in a dry spell. So I'm afraid I cannot find Monsieur Dwarf Puddle Frog. But do you see that there, Jandre? You got it there? There's a little hornet or wasp, and what that is doing is it's come down to the edge here to collect mud to build its nest. So, not seeing it? Okay, let me try again. Don't want it to fly. No, there, it flew. A tiny little red hornet. They've got a very vicious sting. And I was attacked earlier today by a vicious creature called an assassin bug, and it stung. There we go, you can see it almost looks like a little pinprick. So while I was moving around, that nasty assassin bug landed on my leg, And they've got a really, really interesting hunting strategy, and that's how they get their name. They actually fly and land on the back of other bugs, and they've got these incredibly overdeveloped forearms compared to the rest of their legs, and they basically land on the back of insects sometimes much, much bigger than themselves, and they grip with this incredibly powerful forelegs, and they insert their proboscis straight through the carapace of the other insect and will literally suck the insides out. And they can do quite a nasty sting, and the one problem when you get stung by them is not actually the sting itself, is they're actually a very, very dirty mouth part. So I must definitely remember to wipe some disinfectant on it when I get home. So I'm just going to have a look. Oh, there we go. What do we got here? Oh, very, very, very pretty. And tiny little flower called a justicia, and this is a felt justicia. And the community to the south of Singita and Londolosis on the other side of the Sabi Sands is actually named after this flower, so that's the name of the village, is Justicia. They like these sort of very short grass disturbed areas. Having a quick look around here. I'm quite excited about these. This one hasn't got any fruit on it yet, but it's called a white berry bush. Another one of those really nice sweet things we eat. But the reason I started next to the white berry bush is we saw a tiny little millipede, and how's this? There's a tiny hatchling over here on top. Tiny little one. And see, it's still almost see-through. So it's probably been born in the last day with the rain. Sorry? Here we go. And next to it, purely by chance, is a very big one. Maybe it's mommy or daddy. And there's a sub-adult. We've got 3 different ages of millipedes here. We've got a huge adult, a tiny one, and a sub-adult. So this is an ideal little spot for millipedes. And as Jean-Andre is panning across, you'll see all the dead wood and rotting vegetation around, and that's what they feed off. So that's why we've got quite a few of them around this little spot. What else? I saw something else big and scary. Where did it go? Oh dear. I don't know if you've still got us. If you have, Make a Plan went south. And I'm just going to show you quickly if we still... So just have a look here quickly. So unfortunately, our duct tape and stick did not work. So I'm afraid we're going to have to disappear again. Try to fix the thing again. So sorry about that. I'll try to keep some signal so we could say goodbye. So we'll see you hopefully a little bit later.
It is amazing what you can fix with duct tape, but you never know when it's not going to be exactly what you need. I still think duct tape is one of the most useful things that you can have out here. Duct tape and a Leatherman, and probably cable ties as well. Those are the objects that you need when you're trying to fix things. I fixed a car once with my shoelaces. We didn't have a piece of string, stupidly. I always carry string now, but we didn't have a piece of string at the time. And the steering column fell away from the wheel, so essentially the wheel just did that. So I tied it together with my shoelace to get it back home again. Worked perfectly. Not a permanent fix though. Right, well, as you can see, I've left the lions. I am going to return there a little bit later. I'm on my way back around the dam wall and to investigate and see whether there's any lion action there. the Egyptian geese are making a noise. Definitely one of the noisiest birds out here. And it could well be that another pair flew past and they're giving them a send-off. They can be quite fiercely aggressive and defensive. I don't think this is the mother of the goslings, or the parents of the goslings. This might be a different... They would have left their goslings alone. They're very, very good parents. Okay, well, they seem to have quietened down. Must be one of the most widely distributed birds in South Africa. There's no place that you go, except maybe into the western areas and the desert areas. There's no place you can go in South Africa without bumping into a pair of noisy Egyptian geese. And they can be very noisy. And I've had a couple of experiences walking along rivers where they followed me and shouted at me for a good 2 or 3 kilometers. It can be quite irritating when you're trying to sneak up on something and they're flying behind you and letting the entire world know that you're there. Okie dokie. Back towards the dam and let's see what we can find there. Just want to loop around and double check the drainage line on the other side of the dam wall. And whilst we head there, I want to hop onto the Game Drive channel again and get hold of the Arathusa guys and just double check and see if they have managed to catch up with Shadow this afternoon. Oh, conversation. I always have that exact moment where I go to talk and somebody else starts talking. Nice to see that there's plenty of groundwater now. There's a perfect little mud wallow for something like an elephant. Oh, remember what I said about terrapins? Sorry, I promise you I'm not trying to theme this as a terrapin themed drive, but there's a terrapin in here. Where's he gone? I just saw his head pop out. Might come back, there we go. Well done. Oh, back under again. And this is very close to where we saw the terrapin earlier. Oh, that's very pretty. I have absolutely no idea what that is in terms of which dragonfly, but it is gorgeous. So nice to see. Well, what I was saying earlier about terrapins finding groundwater somehow, I wonder whether our terrapin was on her way to find something just like this spot to stay safely in. Okay, bye-bye terrapin. It's our 4th terrapin sighting of the afternoon. It is nice to be back and to see all of these creatures out and about again. Let's head across there. Arathusa. Mike, you wanted to know if terrapins are similar in the way that they're... What are you running from, guinea fowl? You're chasing each other. Sorry, Mike, I'll be back to your question in one moment. Watch the movement of their legs as they jog. and see if it reminds you of anything. In particular, if it reminds you of the Tyrannosaurus Rex in the first Jurassic Park movies, because that is what they based the motion on, was watching the way that guinea fowl run. You can see it perfectly. I watched that movie fairly recently, and the movement was entirely based on guinea fowl. Random and fun fact of the day. Oh, beautiful. And we're back once again. I do apologize for that delay. Every time I try and answer poor Mike's question, he gets interrupted once again. Wow, they've got big. Look at that family of goslings. They're almost sub-adults now. And if you hear some screeching sounds, don't worry, nobody's in any way injured. It's just some children playing in the lodge swimming pool. They seem to be having a wonderful time. Look at how big they are. Oh, that's incredible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, these geese have done very well. Very proud parents. And it is because they are such attentive parents that their goslings have survived as well as they have. Because as you can imagine, there's quite a lot out here that wouldn't mind snacking on a baby gosling. And speaking of babies, I'm going to try and answer Mike's question one more time. Yes, it's determined by temperature. Mike wants to know about the sex of crocodiles and terrapins and so on in terms of their incubation temperature. What's really interesting is that for crocodiles, and now I need to think about this, for crocodiles, the males are incubated at a hotter temperature and the females are incubated at a cooler temperature, and it's so narrow, that margin. You're talking sort of 26 to 30 degrees and 30 degrees to 34 degrees in terms of the difference in the sexes. But interestingly enough, in reverse, the tortoises, the females, are incubated at a hotter temperature than the males. Oh, nest building. That might have been a bit ambitious from that buffalo weaver. Wow, what are you going to do with that, mister? There we go, we have our answer. Right, wow. That was very impressive, and it just goes to show how it is that buffalo weavers do such a good job. And I'm going to turn around just to show you the nest, and then you'll understand why that giant piece of thorn tree that giant nest, or that giant twig and that giant thorn twig that he was carrying, I'm going to show you why he does that. And it's something that's very unique to buffalo weavers, and not something that makes them terribly popular if they're building nests around your camp or in your garden. But there we go. That's their nest there. So that individual flew straight across there to add to the nests. And those are the buffalo weaver nests. They're communal breeders, so they're cooperative breeders. And those maybe 5 or 6 birds are responsible for that entire giant nesting system that is constructed almost entirely from bits of acacia and other solid thorny trees, which makes it almost impenetrable to a predator. You can see every now and again you'll see them hopping around, those little black birds with bright red beaks. Buffalo weavers. And a very clever and interesting approach to nest building. And they do it so fast. Those nests are constructed incredibly quickly. And one of the other things that they will do is if they build in your garden, they're messy to the point that they don't really bother too much about whether or not they drop a couple of twigs every now and again, as you can imagine with a nest that big. And it means that you've got to be very, very careful. What are you shouting at, hippos? You've got to be very careful about walking without shoes in gardens that have nests from buffalo weavers. Oh, I'm just so happy to be back, I don't know where to turn half the time. Let's try and get back. And apparently, without meaning to, I actually answered June's question from earlier on in the drive, and I do hope you're still watching, June. You wanted to know what the big nests are that you see on the Arathusa Dam camera. Well, that's your answer. They are buffalo weaver nests. I'm just stopping to see if maybe our hippos are going to give us a bit of a show. They were talking to each other earlier. There's a couple of floating islands of algae and moss around this dam on the backs of the hippos. Apparently, while I've been gone, there's been a fairly new arrival, because I don't think I've seen a tiny baby hippo, but apparently there is one. And Gracie, who is 8 years old, has named that little hippo Lily. And I'm going to try and see if I can spot her for you, Gracie. And keep our eyes peeled. Might be tucked away with mommy somewhere. And amazing to think that even at those small sizes, they can still hold their breath and function in a dam like this. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that there's a new baby. I'll be keeping my eyes peeled. Sure. That one looks fairly tiny, that we are looking at in the middle of your screen. But not new baby. This must be a different one. But Gracie, I will be keeping my eyes peeled for young Lily. I hope she's around somewhere. And keep watching the Arathusa Dam camera. And this is such a peaceful setting. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but there's a pygmy crow calling, or the red-chested cuckoo that we started our drive with. I can hear one calling somewhere off in the distance there, going, there it is. That is the bird that we were looking at earlier that I was trying to imitate. And I have called them across to me doing that before, because they are territorial. Speaking a little bit about bird calls that we haven't heard in a while, and the fact that the cuckoos are back, there is one very distinctive call that is still missing. You wanted to know when the woodlands kingfisher are going to be back, and the answer should be very, very soon. Drive somewhat accidentally this afternoon, and we've just been looking at those hippos, how it is that they interact with, and sometimes the hippos just popping around the back of the dam into the drainage line just to see if I can spot anything. Let's do a quick. Always been really keen to see in Kruger, and I still haven't managed, is a Pell's fishing owl. So a really rare, or at least very uncommon, species of owl that you only really find along rivers. Hence the name fishing owl, obviously, because that's what it does. No sign of lion tracks coming out here either. And I am thinking fairly soon, I just want to do a short loop and then head back towards those lions for the last half an hour or so of the sunset safari. As we leave the dam and do a quick loop around just to see what we can find, I know that many of you will be keeping an eye out for the little hippo that was named by one of our very loyal 8-year-old viewers named Gracie. And Heidi, you were wondering, if hippos can't swim, how do baby hippos cope? What do they do? And for those of you who are new, oh, it looked like a Wahlberg's being mobbed by a drongo. Look at him go. Oh, well spotted VM. That was incredible. Really, really common to see that. The drongos, particularly at this time of year when all of the bird species are breeding, and it usually happens with drongos. They're quite an aggressive species of little bird, and they can be very, very violent in their defense of their nests. And you very commonly see them mobbing big raptor species like that Wahlberg's. Okay, Chica, don't you start. Right. There's so much happening. I keep getting interrupted in the things I'm saying, but that was an awesome sighting. Now, Heidi, who's watching us all the way in Switzerland, we mentioned that hippos can't swim, and they can't. And for new viewers, that might seem like a really strange thing, the fact that these hippos live in the dams that they do, and yet they cannot swim. And it's true, they hold their breath for 5 to 6 minutes at a time, they sink down to the bottom, they walk along the bottom, and then they pop up. There's an elephant there, but he's going to be very difficult to get to. I don't want to disturb him, and I can't get in. It's so thick down in this side of the drainage line. But in terms of baby hippos, Heidi, what they do is they often rest on mom's back. So if she's sort of slightly tilted in the water, then they might rest their feet on her and use that way to support them. Otherwise, the mom will be somewhere in a shallower area so that her baby can stand near the edge of the water. And only if there's a threat around the edge of the dam will they rush back to the sort of deeper sections. But that baby, as I said, even at a young age, what does that smell? I'm trying to work it out. Oh no, I think it's just stagnant water, and some of the mud puddles has acquired a certain smell to it. But baby hippos are probably one of the cutest things to watch. And they can suckle underwater as well. They can hold their breath for a long time, even at a young age, and they can suckle underwater. And then they'll go out with their mothers and graze around the dam. Although by the sounds of it, this one is so young it won't be even thinking about solid food yet. There's no tracks of any lions coming out onto this road. I'm I'm not sure whether it wasn't one of the Birmingham boys going to have a drink. As to where that 5th Birmingham boy is, I honestly don't know. I haven't seen any sign of him here.
Bush and being out there live has its technical challenges. We're
Carries with it a certain level of the occasional technological gremlin that invades our area. Now, just before I disappeared out of your lives for a little bit, chatted a little bit about Kruger sightings in terms of the birds, and I mentioned the Corey bustard, and I said that it was the biggest flying bird. I should have been a little bit more specific, because Heidi, you were wondering, surely the biggest one is the condor, and the answer to that is I'm judging it by a different standard. The Corey bustard is much, much heavier, as far as I know. I think the condor, just in terms of sheer size, wing length and body length, is bigger, but it's not as heavy. And if I could just stop for a moment, let me stop and do this properly. If I stop for a moment and show you a picture, I can explain a little bit better what I mean. You just find the picture, and you can see how incredibly, here's the 146, stocky they look. And when they do fly, it's not the world's most graceful of, here we go, that's the Corey bustard. You can see it's very, very thick, and when I say it's big, it is, how tall is it? It's probably close to 1.5 meters in terms of height. That is really, really big. No, that must be an exaggeration. It must be just over 1 meter, not quite 1.5 meters. But it has a serious body size. And if we look at the figures, this isn't my other bird book, but as I said, it can reach up to 14 to 17 kilograms, which in pounds is, which way round does it work? 17, yeah, it's close to 35 pounds in terms of weight, which makes it one of the biggest in terms of mass flying bird. I'm going to double check how they define the biggest bird, because the condor is enormous, but there's also certain species of albatross which have the most incredible wingspan. They're not as big, but they're built for long, long distance flight. I'm just looking at comparing some of the various sizes of the different birds around the world. Barbara was wondering where the wingspan of a whooping crane would fit in. And I have to think about that. I'd probably have to double check and look it up. It's a big bird, it's a very big, very solid bird. It doesn't quite have the wingspan to the extent that something like a condor might have or an albatross might have, but it's probably in the region of being close to one of the smaller species of eagle. So even something like a fish eagle wingspan would be about the same. It's probably around, wingspan is probably around 1.5 meters, just thinking about it, maybe up to 2, but I'd have to double check that. Barbara, honestly, I'm not entirely sure. And I do just want to do a quick loop around to get back to those lions. Line track going that way. Okay, that could well be that. Stations, is anybody still responding to those Birmingham and Gala? I think I'm going to make my way back to that position. That be for the moment. Now VM spotted lion tracks heading in this direction. This is in the direction that the Birmingham boys are. I'm just wondering whether it's not them. Could well be. Or it could be the fifth member of that coalition. And it's not unheard of for them to shift around and to move around on their own a little bit every now and again. It might be what they're doing at the moment. But I do want to go across there now. It is getting later, it's getting a little bit cooler, and they do look hungry. Whilst we make our way towards the Birmingham boys in the next few minutes, we're still talking a bit about the hippos and that little baby that apparently was seen. And I mentioned that they can hold their breath fairly well as the fact that they can suckle underwater. And Grace, you were wondering if they give birth underwater or on land. And the answer is they give birth on land. For the most part, unless something serious happens and the labour takes them by surprise, they will go out into dry land, because it's important that that baby is given a proper chance. You know, you can imagine how disorienting it must be for them, and then to have to try and push that baby up to the surface so that it can breathe. It makes more sense for them to go out onto the surface. That being said, try and loop around this way. That being said, it does put them in a more vulnerable position, because they're now open to all kinds of predators that they don't usually have to face out on the bank. And I know there was an incredible story that I read of a female hippo that had gone into labor, and it was obviously something quite tricky. Maybe the baby was slightly breached in some way, but by the end of it, the mother was absolutely exhausted. And whilst she was lying on the bank, a hyena started to come up to explore the baby and probably to kill it and eat it. And in response, while that was happening, an elephant herd had come down to drink. And one of the older females of that elephant herd peeled away from her herd and went and chased that hyena away from the baby hippo, and then left the baby hippo alone. Now, I don't know how that works or what's going on in their minds. It could be that she just simply didn't like the hyena. She wanted it out of her space, and it had nothing to do with the hippo. But I also wouldn't be surprised. I think elephants are so smart. I think there's a really good chance that that elephant was trying to save that baby hippo. You just never know. This way. This is not where I want to be. I don't really want to go and deliver anything to Arathusa. Oopsie. And as we make our way back around, hopefully without any more wrong turns, Jill, who's sending her question through on Twitter, apparently saw a documentary where the hippo was running along the bottom of the dam. And they absolutely can do that, and they can move quite fast. And not only that, it actually makes them one of the crucial factors, or a very useful factor at least, in terms of keeping especially rivers and large waterways that might build up silt deposits and various dead matter that might get stuck there. they actually help to keep it clear just by their regular movement through the water. It keeps it stirred up and clear. But they can run underwater. They can run even faster on land. And I know many of the regular viewers will know this, but definitely not something to be ignored in any way. Just because hippos look big and slow and probably a little bit clumsy doesn't mean that they actually are. And I've seen hippos run on a couple of occasions, and I know for certain that I could not in any way outrun them. And I've also seen one turn basically in a circle, a very, very tight, almost in the size of its body. It managed to change direction. Jump back to the conversation we were having about big birds, and we are nearly at the lions, but Ria was letting me know that the biggest albatross wingspan is 3 meters, which is absolutely enormous. It really is phenomenal. But then if you think about the way that they fly, and they hardly ever land, they essentially soar through the air pretty much the entire time. That is still incredible to think of. That's essentially almost double my height in terms of its length. And then Raisa, you were saying that a Kori bustard's height is 140 centimeters. Thank you. So I was close to 1.5 meters. Thank you all for your feedback. That's one of the things I love, is how much I learn, not only in my own time and from observation, but also from the interaction that we have between us as presenters and you guys watching us. And it really is one of those gloriously heady evenings. It's beautiful. Everything smells beautiful. There's a damp smell from the rain. It's still warm. The birds are all calling. It really is the most beautiful evening. And there's a smell that happens in summer that I can't describe to you. I've never experienced it anywhere else in the world. It's that after rain smell, but it takes on a certain tinge in Africa that is just one of my favorite things in the world.
Like wet dust.
Wet dust. It's exactly what it smells like. Whoa. Oh no, not yet. Not yet. Gotta go to the other power lines. Making my way back to the lions in the dark. We have a viewer watching from where I've just been back to visit, in my home city, or the place of my birth and where I grew up. And Tegan, you were wondering if there have been any reports of brown hyena in this area, and to the best of my knowledge, no. They are fairly unusual. They're very, very shy, especially in areas like this with high lion and high leopard densities. But it's something that I always get really, really excited about seeing, and I'm always on the lookout for. I had a really nice brown hyena sighting when I went back to the place I used to work at, but it's a slightly different environment. It's much rockier. There's plenty of places for them to go and hide and den in rocks and caves instead of just in termite mounds in the way spotted hyenas do. Trying to liberate the spotlight from where James has placed it underneath the rain cover of the car, but I think that might have to wait for the moment. Here we go. Back onto Power Lines Road. We might go through a little bit of a dip in signal just up ahead, so bear with us, it should be fairly short. Just a little bit of a dip. I'm also hearing so many more cicadas and other insects that I wasn't hearing when I left. I know the cicadas were out before I went, but there's also just a lot more in the way of sounds. And now what I'm really looking forward to and waiting for, and something that Brent and I did when we were in Kruger, was whilst we were driving up the Timbavati Road, we listened to frog calls to try and embed some of them in our heads. I'm looking forward to start hearing some of those again. Pardon? The other thing about being around in summer is that, especially with lights on a vehicle, there are definitely certain insects that get attracted to it. And one of the biggest dangers is dung beetles, because especially if you're waving a spotlight around, they absolutely love to come zooming straight at your face. And just to go back, because we are seeing more and more dung beetles out and about with the rain. Jeffrey, you were wondering what the bugs were at the terrapin, at our really nice terrapin sighting in the road. There were a couple of bugs moving around, and for the most part I think they were all dung beetles. My memory was I was focused on the terrapins, so I'm not sure if they were all dung beetles, but there were definitely some dung beetles there. Find my way back into this block and remember exactly where I went off it. Here we go. Oh wait, not just yet. Just after that hole. Yeah, just there. Here we go. Let's go see what those Birmingham boys have got planned for the evening. They're definitely looking very hungry. And while I'm there, I can liberate the spotlight so we can have a bit of extra light. It seems as though we're going to have them all to ourselves now, which is special treat. Here's the side road. Let's go here first. Watch it. Is it through here? Yes. There we go. A bit of a test in orientating myself. That's interesting and fairly unexpected. I think these boys have moved. I wonder where they've gone, which way they've gone, and where they're off to. Right, let me just stop for a moment and liberate the spotlights and double check they haven't just shifted around. Here we go. I definitely did not expect them to move this soon, unless they've gone for a drink. I'm trying to listen for alarm calls as well. They can't have moved very long ago. It's quite unusual for the Birmingham boys to be early evening movers. Doesn't look like it. Alright, I think the one thing they're probably not going to do is move through this block. I think they're going to try and find a road. Let's see if we can find them and find out what they're up to. It was exciting because they were very, very hungry looking. I think that these boys have gone out and about hunting, but please keep your eyes peeled on the Arathusa Dam camera as well, because there's a chance they might be heading across for a drink. I'm going to do a loop around this block and see if I can catch up with them there. But I think they're on their way. I think they're going to go hunting. And Tina, just if they do kill them, you were wondering if I've ever seen them not eat the intestines and then bury them. And the answer is yes, I have. Many, many, many times. They flick sand over them. It's something we saw them do. When was it? Where were we? It was the Inkaluma Pride for Buffalo. And I think it was when I very first started working for Wild Earth back in July. And we saw that they had basically covered up the stomach contents. And it's a way of hiding the smell, you know. It's quite a primitive way of hiding the smell though. Leopards will actually pull out the stomach contents, which they don't like eating, and then move the kill away from that area so that they the smell of the intestines is not associated with their kill. But lions do it as well, and I almost think it's quite a residual instinct. It's not one that, because lions will sit around a kill, they won't drag it away or anything, they'll sit around a kill for days at a time. I don't think they feel too threatened, but they do it. I have seen them do it. They also do it with their dung. I mean their scat. So if they have got, if they are next to a kill and they defecate, they will scrape sand over that as well. And that we definitely saw the Nkuhuma lionesses doing a couple of weeks ago when they had the buffalo kill on Arathusa. They definitely didn't go that way because we've just come from there. I think we would have picked up on them. Now it's times like these for guides where it becomes a little bit of a guessing game, and that's where experience is so valuable in terms of predicting what the animals are going to do, or trying to in any case. It doesn't always work, but it's useful to know, and that's why, although everybody needs a break, it's quite difficult being on leave and then coming straight back, because you haven't built up a timeline of what the animals are doing. Something in there.
Yeah, behind the tree.
Behind the tree there.
Yeah.
Let's go see. Oh, there's a bush baby. Yeah, there's a bush baby. I don't know, it's right at the back of that knob form now. Jumped up as I was watching. I think that was the bush baby. I really, really want to get you all a really nice bush baby sighting. But they're so tricky, they just jump and move. Of information about the brown hyena movements, just to get back to, I think it was Tegan's question in Johannesburg. And Susie, you said that you saw brown hyena twice on the airstrip last year, and that could well mean that that's a good place to start looking for them again this year, because they do, just like spotted hyenas, they do reuse dead sites. So if there's a clan or a family living there, you might see them coming back to that area. The other thing is that many brown hyenas can be completely nomadic. Come on, Birmingham boys, where are you hiding? So they've popped out here. I'm going to do another loop around the block, and whilst I do, we can try and listen, or at some point listen to the sounds of the evening, especially when we close down the show. Now Raisa, you were wondering what species of nightjar we hear around this area. The most common one is the fiery necked. I have European before, once or twice, but very seldom. And there's actually quite a few other species that are around, and I'd have to double check because this is a new area to me. Well, not that new, but it's new enough that there are different birds. I'm going to have to do a double check as to which ones we get here. I used to work up near All Days where all we heard was the trill of the European nightjar. I wonder where these lions are hiding. Oh, sorry, scrub hair. Frog! I don't know if we're going to be able to see it. Just chatting about frogs. No, there he goes. Oh, there he goes. He's just at the top of the light. Where did he go? Where'd you go? There he is. Well done, Liam. Try not to blind him too much. I'm gonna double check his species. He's a little bit too small for an eastern olive toad, which is what I thought he was first. It is a frog. It is definitely a frog. Oh, scrub hair. Is he still? Yes, he's still there. I lost him for a second. Yay! The frogs are all coming out and testing my knowledge. Oh, there's a scorpion too. I don't know if you can see it, Liam. Where'd he go? Oh, there. Oh, all the creatures are coming out. I leave for 2 weeks and everything's out and about. Oh, he's caught a... Did you see that? He caught a flying ant. He had one of the termite reproductors in his claws, in his pincers. Oh, where did he go? Lost him. He went down into his hole. That is so cool. There's obviously been a population explosion. They're all flying around me, and that's what he managed to catch. So a flying ant is not actually a flying ant. It's one of the... you get these populations, explosions of them every now and again from a termite mound, especially after rain. And it's essentially the reproductive termites who are dispersing away from their natal burrow or their native termite mound. And that's what he managed to capitalize on. That was so cool. Sometimes it is just worth stopping and having a bit of a look around at the little things in your area. That was epic. I was in the middle of answering Raisa's question about nightjar species that we get in this area. And I'm going to have to double check. The most common is obviously the fiery-necked nightjar. The nightjars are something that I've only started hearing calling in the last month or so, and they're also reaching their breeding season, but I'm going to keep an eye out for them. They love roads, and an explosion of flying ants like the one we've just driven through would be a perfect hunting ground for them. So it's not just the scorpions who get to capitalize that. I think that's why the frog was there as well. I think he was also catching them. The birds will also be taking full advantage of them. I got really excited about that moment with the scorpion catching the flying ant. But it's something that happened so fast that I barely saw it, and we wanted to make sure that those of you who might have missed it, maybe you turned away for 8 seconds away from your screen and missed out on the action. And what we'd like to do is just do a bit of a replay of it, just to show you exactly what it is that I got so excited about. Let's have a look at that clip now, and I'll be back with you very shortly. I leave for 2 weeks and everything's out and about. Oh, he's caught a... Did you see that? He caught a flying ant. See what I mean about how amazing that was? It really was incredible. There's a flying ant down my shirt. It's okay, it's out again. It really was something quite special. And it's stuff like that that we're going to start seeing more and more. Not just because it's summer and the rains come out, but because we've got things like bushwalk out and about. And that's why it's also one of my favorite things. Driving is incredible. You get to experience the bush, you get to cover distances and spend really quality time with animals. But being out on foot is where you really start to see things just like what we watch now, more and more frequently, and you get to learn so much more from watching them. And it's always a bit of something, it's actually something that I would say has been one of my challenges in starting this job, is that I want to stop and really talk to you guys and, you know, speak to you and speak back to the camera, but I also want to spotlight efficiently. So Arcadia, if we need somebody to come and do the spotlight for us, I promise you'll be the first to be called upon, since you have called shotgun now, effectively. I'm trying to find you more amazing things to show you. Sorry, walk back. Don't want to blind you. But Vicky, you were loving that scorpion kill. You said it was your first live scorpion kill. I think it was mine as well. I've definitely never seen it from in this kind of situation before. I have seen scorpions hunting, but that was just such a good demonstration of how fast they can move. Now, that little scorpion was one of the least venomous kinds. It's a little bark scorpion, as far as I could tell. It was quite difficult to tell because it's dark, but I think it was a little bark scorpion. And with his thin tail and rather large pincers, I think he had. Was it that way around? Yes. It would make him fairly non-venomous. So he's reliant on those incredibly powerful pincers to grab something like a flying ant and to quickly drag it down the hole. And there's all kinds of insects falling into the car with me. I could start a collection. Try and get this twin spot to show you. Maybe see if I can. There we go. A twin spot beetle. Something that I'm sure you've heard the other presenters chat about, and has an incredibly potent acid that it's capable of secreting if threatened. Definitely one of the big reasons why you don't, if something flies and lands on your top, why you don't hit it or smack it. Because if it is something like one of these little guys, then it's going to get scared and it's going to react in a defensive way and release a bit of acid that can burn your skin. But incredible, fast little predators. And the road is the perfect place to be for guys like this. You're going to be hunting around. Now, I've said that a lot of these things that he's hunting are currently making their way into the vehicle. And Pretty Nightmare, you were wondering if we cover the cars at night, or whether we then have problems with unwelcome, not unwelcome, that's not fair, they're not unwelcome, they're just not really necessary guests who make their way into our vehicles. And the answer is we don't cover them unless it's really raining, but we do have covers. But for the most part, as soon as you turn your lights off, the bugs don't come into the car. Right, where's this beetle? I don't want to drive over him. That's it. Go, buddy. Oh, there we go. He escaped. He very sensibly shot into the opposite side of the road. Right, so yeah, if the lights are not on, I haven't had a problem with beetles and bugs finding their way into the cars, no more than usual. But then again, it also gives us something exciting and interesting to show you all the next morning. What I am fairly careful about, especially because my car sits stationary, my personal car sits stationary for quite a long period of time when I'm at work, as you can imagine. I don't really have much need to drive it. But I am very careful about rolling up my windows and making sure everything's sealed up. Because the last thing you want is something like bugs going in, but then also rats and snakes as well sometimes make their home. Scrub there. I can't tell what that is. Oh, it's a little stem bookie. Oh no, it's not. There we go. Nightjar. We chatted a lot about nightjars earlier. I think that's one there. I'm not going to go off-roading. It's very eroded in that particular area, so I'm not going to go off-roading after it. But it seems as though our Birmingham boys have disappeared. I guess we'll have to wait and see what the morning holds in order to find out where they went to. But definitely, after we close the show, I would definitely advise looking at the Arathusa Dam camera, or even the Djuma one, because it's not a hard distance for those boys to cover. I wonder if they've gone off hunting. We'll just have to wait until the sunrise safari tomorrow morning to find out where they went. Hopefully they come and call and mark their territory once again in the next few hours. There's nothing like hearing 5 male lions roar. But since we have come to the end of our sunset safari, I just want to say that it is wonderful to be back, and I'd like to say thank you to you all for your warm words of welcome back. And of course, thank you to Viam and to Brent and Jandre for their brief moments, as well as Tara and Jerry in FC. Have a wonderful day wherever you are, and I will catch up with you tomorrow morning on the Sunrise Safari. Bye-bye for now.